Hey, Pretty Girl Club. Welcome to Decentering Men, episode 15. In this episode, I'm going to talk about how loyalty and love. I've noticed that with those two words, they have different meanings for men than they do for women. Have you ever noticed how, if you look at couples who have been together for 20 years, 30 years, married couples, oftentimes they will have dealt with infidelity in the marriage. So the guy cheats, whether it's quote unquote emotional cheating or physical cheating, messaging an ex, going on a date on the side with like some ex girlfriend or ex wife or whatever. I've noticed that a lot of men in therapy sessions or just in general, they will say, "Oh, I slept with this girl over here, but I still love you." Or, "Hey, I cheated on you 10 times, but I still love you." Have you ever noticed how men have a different definition of what love is than what women have? When women think of love, we tend to think of things like loyalty and faithfulness. We tend to think of things like, he only has eyes for me. He's going to give up on his addiction to sex workers. He's not going to go to strip clubs. He's not going to be addicted to pornography because he loves me, right? I've noticed that women have more of an all encompassing view of love that has to do with like unconditional love. Like, you will love me even when I'm fat. You'll love me even when I don't look good that day. Whereas men seem to have a very boxed in version of love that does not include things like sexual commitment. It does not include things like only having eyes for you. Have you ever noticed how a lot of married men, I mean, you guys here in the Pretty Girl Club, you would know about this because I talk a lot about pretty privilege on here. A lot of the men that will hit on you at work are often married men. These are the men who are looking at you at work. These are the men who are promoting you so that you can work more closely with him at work. These are the men who are hanging around your cubicle, hanging around your desk, hanging around your office. In some cases, maybe even bringing you gifts, bringing you flowers, inviting you out to lunch. I mean, I've had this happen at jobs before where I've had guys, they will offer to buy me lunch, and this is across races, by the way. It's not just black men, because I've had white guys who are doctors who are like married or whatever. They'll still be buying me lunch. They'll still be saying these flirty things, or like even talking about my body, saying how nice my body is. And I've noticed that a lot of men will do stuff like this and then they will still say, "But I still love my wife though." So my question is, if that is a man's definition of love, if love to a lot of men means I still jack off to porn, I still look at other women, I still flirt with other women, I still didn't block my exes, or I still have their numbers in my phone, or I still text and call and FaceTime my quote unquote female friends, if that is a man's definition of love, then what is a woman really gaining? And I've heard a lot of women say, "Well, I'm getting my bags from him. You know, he's paying bills." But I mean, isn't the same thing true for sex workers? They're getting their bills paid because, they're doing their stripping or whatever, or they're doing their OnlyFans. And in a lot of cases, not even having to have sex with the guy, not having to live with that guy, not having to clean up after that guy, not having to birth any guy's children. They're just posting pics or doing whatever, and they're still getting their bags as well. But have you guys ever noticed how a lot of women who have been married for a long time spend a lifetime trying to keep up the image of having a perfect relationship? They spend a lot of time trying to not make themselves look bad. This actually reminds me of the Simone Biles thing with her husband, where this man, he is not anywhere near her level as an athlete. He's nowhere near her level as far as a celebrity. In fact, I can barely remember his name. I have no idea what team he plays for. He's basically a bench warmer because I had never heard of him until he married Simone Biles. And notice how he is not able to maintain the same level of success as her. And I remember even in that interview, he was talking about how he would get annoyed when they would be out to dinner and people would ask him to take the pictures of Simone Biles with her fans and stuff. So a lot of these marriages that look super happy on the outside, a lot of times what's really happening is the woman is fighting tooth and nail to try to convince the public or try to convince her own friends and family that she has this great, amazing relationship with this great guy. But then behind closed doors, a lot of wives are over here paying 50% of his bills, paying 75% of the bills. They're building up their man. So they are the ones who are behind that man's promotion. They're the ones who are kind of pushing him to the next level because it makes her look bad. If she is doing really well in life and he is like a complete dusty compared to her, it makes the woman look bad. And I'm not just talking about Simone Biles here. I'm talking about regular, everyday marriages. Have you ever noticed how, I mean, think about your own friends and family members. Think about the people who have been married for 20, 30, 40 years. Think about your grandparents and how that marriage was. Was that man a protector and provider for those 50 years? Did he talk to the grandmother? Did he talk to her in a nice way? Was he loving towards her? Was she actually happy the entire time? Because every single person I've met of any race who has been married for, let's say, 20 or 30 years, a lot of times they will make comments like, oh, we went through hell and back and now we're still together. Or, hey, yeah, your grandpa used to be an alcoholic when we first got married and I stuck with him through rehab. I stuck with him through XYZ. Would a man do that for his woman? Because most men, it doesn't take you going to rehab and stuff for him to stick with you. Most men won't even stick with you if you gain a few pounds. A lot of men won't even stick with you if you're Beyonce. They will stick with you in public and then still cheat on you behind your back. A lot of men won't even stick with a woman if she is the most perfect person for him and fits all of his preferences and standards. So, why are women supposed to center our lives around the hope that we have not only found this unicorn of a man, not only have we found a needle in a haystack, but that he is suddenly going to continue to be that unicorn or that needle in a haystack for the next 80 years? And I'm going to be the apple of his eye for the next 80 years. No, a lot of women who stay in these marriages for decades on end have had to accept their boundaries being broken multiple times, and they've had to forgive the man for, dozens, if not hundreds, of different sins throughout the marriage. If you look online, there are plenty of articles talking about how some of the main things that married couples argue about is infidelity. Married couples argue about things like sex. They argue about things like money. They definitely argue about things like how to raise the kids. And a lot of time, the mother is the one who is putting in more emotional effort. And by the way, that's going to be a default thing in all relationships, because I've talked in other episodes about how men are not even socialized to even discuss their emotions, to have a vocabulary to describe their emotions, to deal with their emotions in a healthy way. So if a man doesn't even have a vocabulary to describe his own emotions, for a woman to expect that man to be able to read your facial expressions and read your emotions and like kind of think about how you would feel, not only is that a needle in a haystack, that is a unicorn. And my belief is that most marriages are actually not like that. Most marriages are where the woman is kind of telling the man like, okay, John, like, don't forget, it's our anniversary. Don't forget, it is Kylie's birthday next week. Don't forget, it's your mom's birthday. A lot of these long-term, decade-long or like multiple decade-long relationships are held together by the woman. How many of you guys are from families where your mom was kind of the glue that held the family together, or grandma was the one who held the family together? I don't think I've ever heard of a dynamic where the man is the rock of the family and literally holding the family together. That is not the norm. That is not the average. On average, it's the woman who is kind of holding things together emotionally, who tends to be the peacemaker. These women that are married to these men for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, oftentimes those women are kind of silently suffering or silently and slowly giving up on their own dreams, because remember, they call it sacrifice. Right? A lot of men will use gaslighting terms and say, well, marriage isn't about you. It's about us now. It's about we. And usually when a guy says it's about us or it's about we, what he really means is it's about him. So have you ever noticed how over time, if you've been around family members who have been married for a long time, usually it's kind of like, okay, they move to where the guy wants to live because, his job is there. And oftentimes the woman may even end up giving up her career, giving up her educational goals, giving up all of her fun hobbies so that she can take care of children or whatever. And it's funny because over the holidays, I was actually talking to one of my family members, and she's been married for about 20 years now. And I was like, oh my gosh, you are so amazing at like doing stuff around the house, like cooking and, being very creative when it comes to foods and stuff. You're really good at presentation. I was like, you would be so good at doing a TikTok or some sort of YouTube videos or something, because you are amazing at that. Like you could literally start a restaurant if you wanted to, because that's how creative you are. And her response was, yeah, I mean, but that's something that I don't really have time for. And I was like, oh, really? How come? Because from my perspective, it's like you have a big, beautiful house. You know, you've been married for XYZ amount of time. I know that your husband will probably support you in this. And she was like, no, because after I come home from work and then I'm like taking care of the kids and stuff, and then I'm like cleaning up the house and everything, after all that, I'm too tired to do this, cooking stuff and to do my passions. So it's something that I can only do every once in a while. And no shade to her and no shade to women who would rather be a wife and mother rather than living their own personal dreams. But I know for me personally, I cannot live the rest of my life like that. I don't want to spend the next 80 years of my life only doing my hobbies on occasion or only doing things after I'm done with my chores, after I'm done caring for everybody else, after I'm done pouring into everyone else. I want to spend 24/7, 365 being able to nurture myself. A lot of women get into these scenarios with these men where they spend all of their time pouring into this man. And when I say pouring into him emotionally, what I mean is you're encouraging him. You are trying to help him to be better. It kind of reminded me of Simone Biles actually with her husband. If you look at that interview, she was kind of like still being respectful towards him. She was still kind of bigging him up. And she was even trying to encourage him on how to become better as an NFL player. So it's like, okay, you're pouring in all of this into the relationship. You're spending your gas money to travel to where he is so that he can be more convenienced, so that he can save money on his gas, so that he doesn't have to deal with the stress of traffic. You're taking on that stress and going to see him. You are making more than him financially, and now he gets to latch on to your finances and your fame. So now you are building up his fame. You are essentially teaching him how to be in the public eye because, you're more of a celebrity than him. You're kind of trying to help teach him to be more gracious and to be more social when it comes to dealing with fans and stuff. So oftentimes women get into these positions where we are the ones really pouring into the man emotionally. And then meanwhile, a lot of guys, when they define what love is, any guy you're talking to right now, I dare you to ask him, what is love? What does love mean to you? Define what love is. And oftentimes the man will begin describing ways in which a woman serves him, or he will begin describing ways in which a woman can build him up, or ways in which a woman can help him with something. Oftentimes men are very desperate for proximity to women because men need help with certain things. A lot of men are extremely codependent. My theory is that men are way more codependent than women. My theory is that men want women way more than women want men because even guys who are single, even the guys who let's say they're incels or whatever, no girl wants to deal with them, even those guys, they still have to find a way to get around a woman. They will live at their mother's house. They will depend on their sisters to take care of them. Think about when a family member dies and there are a bunch of siblings. Let's say there are guy siblings and girl siblings. A lot of times, guys will look to their sisters or they will look to the women in their family, their daughters, to care for the elderly of the family, to take care of all the caregiving, to organize like how he's going to go to the old folks home, like if somebody's dying in the family, or to talk with the doctors and to administer their medications if necessary. Oftentimes men, even if they're single, even if they don't have a girlfriend, they still have to find some way to latch onto a woman, whether it's their mother, whether it's their sister, whether it's those fathers who are codependent and manipulative of their own daughters. I mean, I've been around people where the father will say to the daughter, like, oh, you're putting your boyfriend over your own father. You're putting your friends over your own father. You're putting your career over your own father. I've been around men who have manipulated their own family members into doing things for them. And then let's say a man, he has no girlfriend and no family. Let's say for whatever reason, he has absolutely no women in his family. These are the men who pay sex workers a lot. So again, a man cannot be without a woman. A lot of times men need women not just for their sexual needs, but also because men have so many emotional voids. Because like I said, men are not socialized to deal with, emotional traumas or to even understand their own emotions. And so a lot of men are so empty inside, almost like a vacuum. A lot of men don't know how to nurture themselves, obviously, because men aren't socialized to be nurturers. This is the benefit actually that women get from being nurturers is we are better at nurturing ourselves and we're better at nurturing fellow women around us. So like our sisters or our mothers, mother-daughter relationships, best friend relationships, girl cousins and stuff like that. Women tend to be better at building support systems and supportive communities. And oftentimes, when it comes to men, if a man has no woman in his life, and when I say no woman, I mean no mother, no sisters, no girlfriend, no sex worker, that man will just live in isolation. That man will just be isolated by himself. And that's why they often project that fear onto us, like the fear of dying alone or whatever. And you guys have seen how it's been going viral on TikTok and on YouTube. There are plenty of women who work at morgues. There are women who work at retirement homes. I myself worked at a retirement home at one point, and most of the people in the retirement home were men. And most of the ones dying alone in those retirement homes were men. And this includes men in that retirement home who were doctors, who had money. One guy in there was a surgeon. He still died alone or whatever because his son, so he had a son, and the son wouldn't even come to visit him that often. The son would come maybe once every couple of months or whatever. Meanwhile, if there were women in the retirement homes, they would have all their daughters. I remember there was one woman, she had 4 daughters that would come visit her. Like some of the other women, they would become friends in the retirement home, and then they would like hang out together and do all this cool stuff. So women in general tend to be better at socializing, better at nurturing themselves and nurturing others. Women in general, we are socialized to be more thoughtful, which means that we get to be thoughtful with ourselves and with those around us. So I feel like men see this inherent emotional benefit that women have, and they have to get a piece of it somehow, even if it means paying a sex worker to pretend that he's attractive for a couple of hours or to pretend that she likes him for just a couple of hours. This is how many voids the average man has. This is how emotionally empty and emotionally isolated a lot of men are without the presence of women. And I feel like a lot of it is because a lot of men are not aware of their own emotions. And some of the previous episodes, you guys remember how I pulled up some articles and stuff about how about 75% of the people who are even in therapy are women. So a lot of men, they don't care about therapy. They don't care about trying to get help for themselves. So you've got a lot of men who are walking around with undiagnosed mental illnesses, but they don't realize that they have mental illnesses. They don't realize how depressed they actually are and stuff because, like I said, these men on average, they don't grow up in homes where they talk about psychology. Men on average are not going to college as much as women. And so they're not in colleges taking, basic psychology classes about, hey, this is PTSD. This is what bipolar is. This is what depression is. And so a lot of men are very emotionally illiterate. So how am I supposed to believe a man who says he loves me or that he wants to be in love and whatever? How am I supposed to trust his view of love if he is likely emotionally illiterate? So you're telling me you can't even describe your own basic everyday emotions and why you feel them, sadness, happiness, etc., but suddenly you know what love is and you know how to give love unconditionally for the next 80 years only to one woman? It doesn't make sense. The math ain't mathin'. And this is why you see a lot of men do horrendous things to women, such as publicly humiliate them in front of all of social media, like Simone Biles, and then still say, oh, but I love you. Because that man doesn't understand that from an emotional perspective, humiliating someone publicly or negging someone and not caring about their success and not being encouraging towards them, that's not a part of love. That's the opposite of love. And also, if you look at a longer version of that interview with Simone Biles and her husband, and if you kind of look at all of their interactions and stuff, I saw a clip where Simone Biles, I guess she had sent her boyfriend, I guess he was her boyfriend at the time, I don't know, but she sent her husband a photo of her like doing the splits, kind of like a sexy pose, like one of her legs was in the air. And when he was talking about it, he was kind of like, bruh, like, what are you doing? Okay, so not only does that tell me that you are not attracted to her, because if any woman that you found sexy or any woman on porn or whatever was lifting up her leg or something, you would be looking at it like, oh, like, look at that, like that looks good or whatever, or you would be showing interest. So he didn't even show interest in Simone when she was going through all these hoops, like jumping through all these hoops, sending pictures of her in the splits to him. He still had a reaction like, bro, what are you doing? Like, so you're telling me that a man can respond like that when you are trying your hardest to be sexy for him, and that's love? Him reacting like, bruh, what are you doing? Imagine if you were with your husband or something and you were trying to be flirty with him and like, let's say you're wearing a lingerie or something, or you're kind of doing a split or a sexy pose, and he's like, bruh, what are you doing? Would that make you think that that man loves you? This is why I am convinced that when men use the term love, oh I love you or this is what love is, I am convinced that men have a different definition of love than what women are thinking of, because women aren't thinking of love as I try to be sexy and then he responds with bruh, what are you doing? And also, I feel like a lot of men, they try to dangle love in front of our faces as if we're supposed to chase it like a donkey chasing a carrot. So a lot of men, they realize the leverage that they can use over women, so they will use love as a form of leverage. Like, oh, I'm just looking for somebody to love, or like, because they know how strong a desire women have to be loved if that woman is more male centered or she's like more of a pick me or whatever. And by the way, there is nothing wrong with wanting to be loved. But the kind of love that I would want, it would be a healthy love. It would be a faithful, loyal love, not whatever bullshit a lot of guys are talking about saying, I cheated on her, but I still love her. No, you didn't. Or, oh, I'm still addicted to porn and I can't give up porn. I'm going to look at it for the next 80 years. Oh, but I still quote unquote love you. Oh, I'm still going to go to the strip club and I'm still going to text my ex and I'm still going to have a bunch of female friends. Have you ever noticed those guys where all of their female friends are blondes, or all of their female friends have an hourglass figure, or all of their female friends are MLS women, and then suddenly they'll be with you and they'll be like, oh no, but I love you, but they're all just friends. If that's what love is, I don't want anything to do with it. And I truly do believe that a lot of women who have been in marriages for 20 years, 30 years, a lot of women are going through stuff like this on a daily basis, but they rationalize the fuck out of it and make it like, well, this is just a part of being married. Even if you look at a religious perspective of this, look at all of the sermons online that talk about marriage, look at all of the religious and spiritual teachings about marriage, and they will tell you that marriage is not meant to make you happy. They will say things like marriage is supposed to be a sacrifice, or, all of the burdens and the stresses that you go through on a daily basis in a marriage, aka emotional trauma and turmoil, that is supposed to sharpen you and make you a better Christian. As iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. So you got to just take up your cross and follow Christ and, be like Jesus and turn the other cheek. So if you're in a relationship and he is emotionally neglectful, well, I mean, he's not beating you, he's not cheating on you, and so you should be happy. I mean, the bar is literally in hell. A lot of people view marriage as, oh, if the guy is not actively physically cheating on me and physically having sex with another woman, and if he doesn't punch me in the face, then I have a good marriage. And you know what? I used to even think like that myself. But the question that can help you balancing this out is you can just ask yourself, am I willing to put up with this for the next 80 years? Because I've already talked about how on articles it says that the average couple will argue around 2 times a week. That is like the average. So if you argue less than that, that's considered good. So, oh, okay, I only argued with him once a week. I only argued with him 52 times this year. So like I have a good relationship. But for me personally, I don't even want to argue 52 times a year. I don't have time for that. I don't want to argue like, oh shit, it's Saturday. Oh, it's been 7 days. I guess we're going to argue now. I don't want to spend the next 80 years going through an argument every week, going through an argument twice a week, having a house where half of my decorations are extremely masculine and extremely ugly. Don't even get me started about how men will say, oh, I love her. I love my wife. Meanwhile, you disrespect her living space. If you truly think about when you have a newborn baby as a woman, how much you love that baby. Would you go into the newborn baby's room and start trashing up their room, peeing on the floor and make it all stinky in there, put your musty clothes on the floor and just not give a fuck? No, because you love that baby. Anytime you love someone, you respect their space, right? You don't go in and violate their living spaces. You don't walk into a 5-star restaurant and throw napkins all over the floor and like disrespect the entire restaurant. No, because you consider that trashy, right? So why is it that a lot of men, they will act one way in public? They will try to act like they're this very classy, Renaissance, high value man. But then once they get into these marriages and they've been married for 20 years, 30 years, they will just basically show their asses and they will start disrespecting that woman's living space. And then if the woman says, hey, can you kind of like clean up your mess? Or when you cook dinner for yourself, can you not leave all these dishes in the sink? Then men will take that as nagging. And for those of you who say, oh, well, we can just hire a maid and that's going to solve every problem, first of all, the average man does not even have enough money to hire a maid ever. But let's say a man is a millionaire. Let's say you find your unicorn man and you find your needle in the haystack and he's a multimillionaire. Even multimillionaires on average, they don't have maids coming into their house every single day. Or like they don't have a maid living in their house on standby so that when your husband throws his dirty underwear on the ground, she just literally walks behind him and picks it up. No, there is still some time that you would be at home by yourself with your husband, even if he is a millionaire. So if the maid comes once a week, he could still be leaving your kitchen looking like shit 6 out of 7 days of the week until the maid comes. So a lot of people that try to rationalize these issues and say, oh, well, you just hire a maid, problem solved. Well, no, because even a maid is not there 24/7. So as soon as he pees on the toilet, are you really going to leave all that pee on the toilet until the maid comes next week? You're probably not. So if he boo-boos and sharts everywhere and there are skid marks on your toilet seat, you're telling me you're going to leave those skid marks on the toilet seat for the next 3 days? So if he showers and he pees in the shower, you're going to leave all that pee on your bathtub floor until the maid comes? This is delusional. And a lot of femininity content creators or quote unquote soft life content creators, they're not thinking things through. You are not being realistic. And by the way, I totally agree with like you can dream and you can like have goals and stuff. And I agree with that. Like I love the concept of dreaming and like kind of working towards something. But I do feel like a part of working towards your dreams, even in relationships, is decentering it. So for example, I want to be a content creator. Do I want to have 10,000 subscribers? Of course. But I don't center my whole life around it. I still continue making content just like I did when I had 100 subscribers. I still continue responding to comments just like I did when I had less subscribers. And I don't center my life around, oh, once I get XYZ, all of my problems will be solved. So let me sit back and do nothing and just wait for it to appear. And I feel like a lot of women who are married, who have stayed married for a very long time, they have had to suffer in silence a lot. So they've had a lot of tears. A lot of these women have cried themselves to sleep multiple times. A lot of these women have had tearful arguments with their husbands multiple times. And so my question to you guys is, are you willing to spend the next 80 years of your life dealing with that? Are you willing to go through all of these tearful arguments and crying and fighting and, feeling that ping in your stomach when he stares at that other girl or, feeling that lump in your throat when you see his girl best friend texting his phone at 11 p.m.? Are you willing to turn the other cheek when you find porn on his phone? Are you willing to look the other way when you see that he is being emotionally neglectful towards you? Are you willing to stay silent when he says, oh, you want to move to LA and become an actress? Nah, I don't really think we should move to LA. It's too expensive. I like having my money here in Texas, so we're going to stay in Texas. Are you willing to give up on whatever you were pursuing before him so that you can make him your center? There is no wrong answer because this channel is actually not meant to shame women who are in marriages and have kids and stuff. This channel is really just meant to bring balance to the conversation. So if you haven't noticed, a lot of my content, it's the unpopular opinion. It's the side that's not talked about. And I feel like when it comes to relationships with these men, there are a lot of things that a lot of women do not talk about and they don't think about it. But for me, because I have already been through a lot of these things, I try to just give a different perspective. But the definition of love for a man, I've noticed it's way less all-encompassing. Like it doesn't include a lot of things that women view as love. For women, on average, we would imagine that, if a guy really loves us, then he would do his best to respect our living space. He wouldn't want us to have to spend the next 80 years with decorations that we don't like. He wouldn't want us to have to be forced to spend $1,000 on an ugly ass leather couch because it has a cup holder and a little recliner thing like how you would have in a man cave. But a lot of women are constantly making these types of sacrifices in order to be able to say, I've been married for 10 years. You know how a lot of men talk about having a man cave? Why is there no thing for having a woman cave? Notice how a lot of times a woman, she will go 50-50 on a house, and that house will have a bedroom and an additional man cave. Meanwhile, she doesn't have any woman caves. She doesn't have an extra bedroom all to herself. And I've noticed that women will be going 50-50, and the man really gets to take over and be, quote unquote, the head of the house. while the woman is the one doing the extra work. And have you ever noticed how a lot of times if there are problems in marriages, the woman is often blamed? So for example, let's say that a guy cheats. A lot of people will say, "Oh, well, were you pleasing him in the bedroom?" Well, it's like, okay, just because people have problems in the bedroom, that doesn't mean go out and cheat because you don't keep that same energy for a woman. If a woman says, he's not pleasing me in the bedroom and then I cheated, that woman would be called a whore. That woman would be shamed. But notice how we don't call men whores. We don't say, oh, well, you're a whore because you went and cheated on your wife and that's bad. No, a lot of women are actually socialized to forgive men for things like cheating and, boys will be boys. We get told those types of talking points. And this is what makes men think it's okay to say, oh, I cheated on you, but I still love you. Oh, I got mad that one time and I threw something at you, but I still love you. Is that love? You throwing stuff at women or you getting violent or calling a woman names? A lot of men will literally call their wives names. They will call their wives, oh, you're such a nag. Oh, you're really annoying. Oh, you're such a brat. Oh my God, you're so spoiled. Oh wow, you're looking pudgy. You're looking chunky. Oh, you're so skinny. You have no ass. And then they will say it as if it's supposed to be some sort of joke, but then they will still turn around and say they love her. That is not the definition of love. Love does not involve name calling. Love does not involve being emotionally impatient with your wives. You know how in the Bible, for those of you Christians out there or people who love to use the Bible, doesn't it say love is patient, love is kind, love does not boast? Is that what this guy was exhibiting in this interview with Simone Biles? Because he was definitely trying to boast about himself. He was definitely not being kind and patient because anytime they asked Simone Biles a question, he literally derailed the interview to make it talk about himself more when nobody even knows who he is. Like, what team does he even play for? And I heard from somewhere that this guy's not even on the starting five or like he's not even a starter in the NFL. So you're telling me this guy plays left bench. That's his position on the football team. So he's basically a backup NFL player. He's like one of the backup guys. So like if the actual star of the team gets injured, literally like 5 people would have to like break their leg in order for him to get playing time. People would literally have to be escorted off the field by paramedics in order for this guy to score touchdowns. But this guy is totally ignoring his wife's accomplishments or claiming that he knew nothing about gymnastics, whereas now the tweets of his have surfaced where he did, in fact, know about gymnastics and he did, in fact, watch the Olympics and stuff like that. So he was familiar with it, obviously. And even if he wasn't familiar with it, they met on the Raya dating app and it said on her profile that she was a gymnast. He said this in the interview, that it says on her profile she is a gymnastics person. So if you see that somebody is a gymnastics person and you follow their Instagram or you like click on her Instagram or you see her Instagram profile, I'm sure you probably saw at least some of her pictures at some point that showed her with gold medals or competing in the Olympics. So to say that like you didn't know who she was or you basically didn't really know the extent of her career, that's 100% disingenuous. I don't even watch the Olympics and I know who Gabby Douglas is, I know who Simone Biles is, I know who Michael Phelps is, I know who a lot of these, I know who Usain Bolt is. I can name multiple people from multiple different sports or whatever because that's how famous people get when they do the Olympics or when they win some sort of championship. I don't watch football, but I know who Tom Brady is. I know who Russell Wilson is. I know who a lot of different football players are because they have kind of done something to make them successful or be in the public eye. Meanwhile, this guy's in the NFL. We don't even know who he is. But he claims, after negging and basically derailing the conversation, he still claims to love her. So my question for you ladies is, what is your definition of love? Because a man ignoring me, a man making my living space look ugly, a man not caring about my dreams, and a man wanting me to give up on my dreams or quote unquote sacrifice my dreams so that I can live his dreams, and then that same man causing me to pay 50% of his bills. So he gets a discount on bills while I get an increase in labor. And then I have to go 100% on a pregnancy. I have to, I'm the more emotionally intelligent one on average because of how we are socialized or whatever. I'm supposed to entertain him in the bedroom. Meanwhile, his definition of love is, oh, I love you, but I'm still going to look at other women. I love you, but I'm still going to be texting, calling, FaceTiming my female friends. I love you, but I still have my ex on my Facebook, Instagram, and all of my social media. I love you, but I'm still going to go to the strip club or look at other women or go on these business trips or go on these guys' trips and still flirt with other girls at the bar in hopes that somebody could sleep with me and you'll never know about it. I love you, but I don't actually care about your hobbies. I'm not going to take the emotional burden off of you. I'm not going to take the load off of you. In fact, I'm going to increase your load because I now expect you to pay for part of my bills. I expect you to cook for me. And when the maid is not here, I expect you to be my maid. But this is supposed to be love? A lot of times when men use the term love, their definition of love does not include things like loyalty. It doesn't include things like emotional intelligence. It doesn't include things like emotional support. Ask a man to define what emotional support is. I am convinced that if you ask any man what is emotional support, most men can't even explain the definition of what that term even means. So you're telling me I'm supposed to hinge a lifetime's worth of happiness on a man? I don't know how many times I have to say it on this channel, but a man is not a plan. And you should never hinge your happiness upon a man or upon anyone else for that matter. And for me personally, once I began to decenter guys and like decenter men or whatever, that helped me to have so much more confidence, so much more self-esteem, so much more freedom in my life because I was able to. It was basically like a weight was being lifted off my shoulders. Like I didn't have to worry about, oh, is this guy going to pick me? Or like, oh, I have to show this guy that I'm wifey material. Or, oh, does he think I'm pretty enough? Like, am I his type? I didn't have any of those questions swirling around in my head anymore, like how a lot of wives have those questions swirling around in their heads. So if you are somebody's wife and you're laying in the bed next to him and then his phone goes off and it's his quote unquote girlfriend from work, oh, she's just a coworker, whatever. I don't have questions in my head swirling around about, oh, what is she to him? Or is he thinking about her? Or when we were having sex, was he thinking about Sally from work? I don't have to deal with any of those things because I have no longer chosen to center, winning the heart of a man or winning the love of a man because whatever you're winning, like, oh, I won his heart. Okay, well, what's in his heart? Ask a man to describe his heart. Ask a man, hey, what's in your heart? Most men can't even answer that question. So what are you even talking about? You've won his heart. He doesn't even know what's in his heart. This is why there is so much freedom in decentering men. And this is why a lot of women, once they get a divorce, they feel a new sense of freedom. And a lot of women, once they are divorced or once their husband dies, most of those women will not even get remarried again because they are so thoroughly enjoying their newfound freedom without dealing with the commitments that a man is requiring of them. So that woman can now commit all of her time to sewing, to painting, to living with her cats, to going to the park and feeding the squirrels or doing whatever random things she couldn't do when she was with a man. I mean, I remember there were times when I was in relationships where I literally could not enjoy certain hobbies as much because the boyfriend or husband or whatever, he didn't like those hobbies. So he didn't want to go to a coffee shop. I love coffee. I love all of the different lattes. I have tried damn near every latte. I love trying vanilla lavender lattes, rose flavored lattes. I like matcha. I like all kinds of teas. So I really enjoy going to different coffee shops and stuff. I've been around guys where it's like, oh, I don't like that. So I didn't get to go to the coffee shops as much because I was more male centered, depending on a guy to take me to all these fancy places to try all these different lattes, or like, oh, it's summertime, I got to get my caramel frappuccino, or oh, it's the fall, it's Christmas time, I have to get my gingerbread latte, got to get my pumpkin spice. No, the average guy is not even thinking about what are her hobbies and how can I like participate in her hobbies more. But you know what the average woman is doing? She's doing that for a guy. Oh, he likes Sunday football, so let me make some cookies because I know that Sunday football is coming up and he's going to want a hot meal while he watches football. Oh, my husband drinks beer and I don't? Okay, well, when I do the grocery shopping for us, now I'm going to purchase beer because that's what he likes to drink. The average husband isn't thinking of his wife like that. A lot of husbands or guys in relationships, they are not out here going grocery shopping thinking, what types of groceries can I cook so that she can have all these extra meals? The average guy is not thinking that. And if he was, then we would see less divorces. Anyway, what do you ladies think? Let me know in the comment section and I'll talk to you next time. Stay pretty, ladies.